This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Today's verse of the day comes from John 16:13. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you all into truth. He will not speak on His own. He will speak only what He hears, and He will tell you what is yet to come. Good morning, welcome to the Verse of the Day podcast presented by Public House Media. I'm Baxter Colburn. Great to have you alongside as we get ready to roll for another edition. Thursday here finally is ready to go. We're excited. Friday nearly here as well too. And crazy enough to think that we are just almost a little over a week away from Easter Sunday. Obviously it is Palm Sunday on this coming Sunday. So as we get ready for Easter, we will be getting ready to do a little bit more of a deeper look into what is going on during Holy Week. We'll kind of take some of the key verses that people talk about and know a lot about for Holy Week and kind of outline all of those as we go through. So be ready for that as we get ready to celebrate the death and resurrection of Jesus. I do want to say a special thanks to Kathleen for submitting today's verse of the day, so appreciate that. If you want to do that as well, too, if you want to submit a verse for us to use, you can go to our Facebook and Instagram pages, or you can send us an email at verseofthedaypod@gmail.com. Feel free to do that. Let your friends know that they can do that as well, too. And a new show comes out every single morning at 5 a.m. Central Time, right here on Spreaker.com, right on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, wherever you might find your podcast player or player things that you do. So this is a very intriguing verse because this is Jesus himself getting ready to die. And he's essentially putting his final touches on his ministry while he's on earth. And he's setting up he's basically trying to lay the foundation and lay the last couple of pieces for his disciples then to get ready to take over. Now I know we were going to do more focused end of Jesus ministry talk during Holy Week, but we'll get into more more popular, just more foundational verses during Holy Week. This is still very important. I think it's interesting too because there's a note from the NIV Bible that says, "Notice the contrast between in me and in this world," talking about today's verse, "and between peace and trouble. I have overcome." Just before his death, Jesus affirms his final victory. So he's already predicting, and this is what makes it so difficult in my mind for people to look at Jesus and say, "Oh, no, he never did anything like that." There's no record of Jesus ever getting something wrong. You realize that? Realize that when you look at the Bible, when you look at history, that Jesus, anything he predicted, never was wrong? I think that's pretty remarkable. When you can have so many things that you're saying, so many things that you're predicting will come true, and when you're batting 1,000, you must be doing something right. And yet so many people do not believe. I think this is great though because we see Jesus in the Bible right now. It says so many good things. We see this right after of his verses, and it says Jesus prays for his disciples, and then Jesus prays for himself, and Jesus continues to extend. He's basically just trying to put these final touches on. You know that right before you have a big party or a big celebration or something monumental is about to happen, a wedding, a graduation. There's so many things that have to go into this final moments where you're just trying to get every little thing all put together, all perfect. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing here. He's trying to get his disciples ready to go because he knows that as soon as he's gone, that's really when the real work happens. Because if Jesus doesn't find the 12 disciples and he doesn't pour into them and he doesn't do everything that he does for those 3 years, if he doesn't die for our sins, our world is very different for the remainder of history. He pours into those fine men, that is, although they may be very surprised about what exactly that God's purpose is for them, they still are able to, in a sense, get prepped and be asked to step up and say, hey, this is Jesus saying, he's like, hey, I've done everything I can do. I've given you all my, all the wisdom that I can give. Now it's time for you to go do the real work. And I think that's important for us in our life too, because we don't necessarily need to go through and do everything like this specifically in the sense that, okay, we need to prepare for everyone to have life after us. Obviously, you can do certain things, and we don't necessarily know when any of us are going to die. Jesus knew. He knew exactly the day, the time, the hour, the second when he was finished on this earth. So he was, in that sense, he had an advantage because he knew what he was doing. But it still is important for us as well, too, to be able to echo this into our lives as well, too. Trying to make an impact, trying to establish what we know, and trying to better ourselves as a way that we can help and serve Christ and serve others as well too. As we get ready for Holy Week, it's going to be an interesting time because it's going to be a lot of reflection. I think it's going to be something that's going to push us and challenge us and make us sometimes feel uncomfortable depending on the verses that we end up going with as well too. But I really want you to just take a little bit more of a look here at these verses here in John 16 because it does a really detailed account of just what Jesus is feeling, and you can feel the raw emotion of what Jesus is going through here towards the end of his life as well too. Spend some time in these verses today if you can, and like I said, as we get ready for Holy Week, prepare because we're going to see the celebration on Palm Sunday. We're going to see the ultimate denial and death and pain of Jesus when he dies. And then we're going to celebrate with the resurrection, and he is risen on Easter Sunday. A lot of really good things to look forward to, and all of those will be here on the Verse of the Day every morning at 5 a.m. Central Time. I hope you'll tune in.
You've been listening to the Verse of the Day podcast hosted by Baxter Colburn on Public House Media. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Verse of the Day. It comes out 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The podcast can be found by subscribing on Google Play Podcasts and wherever good podcasts are found. More information about Verse of the Day podcast can be found by going to thephmedia.com.